I recently spoke in front of a group of teachers and parents, and I thought that this was such a great conversation because you had the professionals in a room, you had other parents in a room, and we were really able to identify that there is a huge gap between teachers and parents and professionals with our kids that have disabilities. Hi, welcome back to A Mother's Guide Through Autism podcast. Today, I'm going to be giving you some tips about how to approach your child's teacher when their needs are not being met. So this is a very important topic, and it is common. And as a parent coach, this is a question that I really do address quite often. And also, having been on this autism journey as a mother guide, I have addressed this over and over and over again. I think that's one of the things to remember as we're having this discussion today, this conversation about how to approach a teacher when you really see that your child is struggling and you feel like you've made yourself clear, you feel like you've done all the things that require your child to get the needs met. You've been to the IEP meetings, you've been to all the meetings, you feel like you've done a really good job explaining to the teachers that your child's needs are not being met. So I want to really get into that today. I recently spoke in front of a group of teachers and parents, and I thought that this was such a great conversation because you had the professionals in a room, you had other parents in a room, and we were really able to identify that there is a huge gap between teachers and parents and professionals with our kids that have disabilities. And I talk to autism as a disability because that is what my experience has been. But as we all know, you can be on the autistic spectrum and have other disabilities that go along with that. A lot of our kids also have ADHD. They have all kinds of underlying issues, sensory issues that go along with the autism and autism-like behaviors, which, as I keep saying and repeating what my son Joseph says, if you've met one person with autism, you've met a person with autism, which means that we all have different strengths and weaknesses because disabilities do not make the person. The person is still the person who learns differently, who needs our extra care and advocacy because they do learn different. And this is so interesting to me because Joseph graduated from high school in 2010. That was 12 years ago. And what I'm hearing as I am helping other parents with school in particular, with their child's education, is not a lot has changed. And I can even go back even further than 2010 and go back to the 90s when Joseph was diagnosed and his journey through his education. And the one thing that is still present that is huge is there is a huge gap between what educators are getting and what parents are getting, and then not having those dots connected. So really, how do we bridge this gap? Because there were students in the discussion, in the talk that I gave last week, and these future teachers are saying, you know, we're not getting the education that we need. We're not covering disabilities, or in particularly autism, in our educational classes. And I can remember, because, you know, I got my educational degree, both bachelor's and master's, and I can talk to that as well, because all I remember in my child development class, and this is a long time ago, was I heard about autism and what it was at that time, which was mostly that it was the refrigerator mom, right? Mostly that children were not getting the love and the care that they needed in their early development, which we all know is garbage. It's garbage. It's absolutely, that statement is far, far, far from the truth. And so moving forward, here we are today, and I'm still hearing that future educators are not being educated on what autism is. They don't have an understanding of what this disability is, what all comes with it, and how to support the child that learns differently, and that not all autism kids have all the same disabilities, but each of them are different. And how do we look at these kids individually while we're trying to figure out how to manage everything else that is required from us as an educator? And it's a lot. Then we look at the parent, and the parent is just looking for resources. Parents are overwhelmed, and they're looking to the professionals to help them help their child navigate, and help their child learn, and help their child have good experience, and learn how to be inclusive in society. This is a social disorder. And I have spoken before about going through my graduate school. And this was when Joseph was a bit older, and I had my second child, Jacob, and I went back and got my master's degree. And I stood before a room full of fellow educators, and I was advocating for autism students to be included, to be mainstreamed back then. And you can imagine the response I get. It's like, you know, they were simply saying, you know, it was fear. Fear was speaking back to me, and I stood my ground. And I still believe that in order for a social disorder to be part of society, we must include all people. And I do strongly believe that. So how do we bridge that gap? How can we build a bridge that advocates not just for the kids, but supports all the pieces that go with that? We all know that our children deserve to be in a classroom. We all know that our goal is to help them to be happier, to be productive citizens. And that is what my goal was for my son, Joseph. And I'm happy to say, with a lot of work, tears, depression, anxiety that comes along with being a parent of a child on the autistic spectrum, but we're still growing, and we're still on this journey. So now, so many years later, I'm hearing that there's still this gap. Yes, have there been improvements? Yes, there have. but not nearly enough. So we're going to start where we're at. We're going to address some of the reasons. I feel like some of the reasons that we're still where we're at with this gap between education and our kids, with educators just simply not being trained. That is one of the big things. I think that's why this is still an issue of the gap between our kids getting what they need and parents getting the resources and help from the professionals that their children need. And I think that teachers are not being educated or trained. They are trying. Most teachers are trying. They are overwhelmed and they need the resources and they need training and they need support. You know, I know that from my own personal experience that depending on what you teach and where you teach, that also has a lot to do with a lot of the training and help that you get. But across the board, I believe that this is true. I believe across the board, and I understand that there are some parents who are able to get better resources and more help for their children than others. But across the board, I don't feel like parents are getting the help and the resources and the support and that they need from the educators. It's both. It's both. We have a gap, not always, but mostly. So having really noticed this in our conversation, that really motivated me to start really advocating to get this problem. I don't know that we'll ever resolve it, but what I do know for sure is that we can do a better job. We can all take responsibility and we can all do a better job and try to be kinder while we're trying to bridge this gap. So having both scenarios, being both the educator and the parent, I'm going to offer you some helpful tips of how you can approach your child's teacher when you feel like your child's needs aren't being met. And again, I can personally tell you, I can give you story after story after story of how Joseph's needs were not being met, how I was so frustrated and overwhelmed, and I felt like I don't know what else to do. You will get through it, but for today, in this moment, I want you to take a breath and I want you to meet yourself where you're at today. Not what happens if they don't listen to me. Let's get away from the things and the thoughts that are overwhelming you in this moment. Remember, to meet yourself where you're at instantly will shift you, not to they're not hearing me, not to all the negative thoughts, but to, okay, I'm here today. We have come a long way, and I'm going to shift it. I want to shift it because I want to feel better. All right, here we go. Here is one approach that I'm going to give you. So, strategy number one, tip number one. Before approaching your child's teacher, I want you to take 3 breaths and remember to shift your energy to approachable energy. What does that mean? As you know, I was an educator for many, many years. And what I found was that the majority of the time, if there was a conflict between myself and a parent, or as a parent with the teacher, either way, 99% of the time it was communication. It was simply not understanding what the situation was. So as a teacher, the parent would come in and their energy certainly was not approachable. I instantly would go to defense and think, oh my gosh, what's happening? Why are they upset? And not knowing what I was going to get hit with, because I can only speak for myself. My intentions were always to help the kids. And I would say most of your educators feel the same way. So when you walk in and your child, a situation did happen with the child, and you are upset, take those 3 breaths and understand that the teacher may not be aware, may not understand the situation. So whether it was something like perhaps your child was bullied, which happened a lot with Joseph, or they're not understanding and you feel like you're doing the teacher's job at home all night long. I know if you're listening to this in this moment, you can relate to all these situations. But the bottom line is, whatever the situation, when you address the teacher and you want the teacher to be approachable, you enter with approachable energy yourself. Remember, they may not know, they may not have been trained in whatever the issue is, and they may not have the resources or even know where to begin. So there's neither side to put blame on. Remember, I want you to go to these meetings with approachable energy and really make sure that you're coming also with some resources, even if it's one little tip that you can leave the teacher with to help the teacher help you. We're looking for a win-win situation. And when you can offer up resources, because this I know for sure, you're the expert of your child. You know your child better than anybody. And you know that. And the teacher may not know certain things about your child. So offer them a solution. Offer them a very small strategy that you can leave them with, and then leave with moving forward that you would like to keep the communication going. You are approachable, and let them know that you're willing to continue to give them helpful resources about how to help your child. And how do you do that? Step 2 or tip 2, I would ask this question. Once you have all the tension resolved and you're both in a good energy, you've entered with approachable energy and the teacher is reading that you're only here to help. Ask this question: how can I support you? So we're going to shift it there, right? You really need support from the teacher, but in return, how can you support the teacher? And I think that's an important question, and that will also shift any negative energy or where the teacher feels defensive. You are here for your child. You want to navigate this in a positive energy that's approachable, but also you want to be able to offer the support in return. Once the teacher gives you the feedback of what they really need support with, listen carefully. I have been in those situations where I really couldn't believe what I was hearing. And inside, I was like, you've got to be kidding me. I have told you so many times that this is what happens when my son when a classroom is loud, when there's chaos, when there's a fire drill, I mean, you name it. I felt like I was a recording, and that I did really, really cover it, I thought, very well. And here they are needing support with it again, although I've already addressed it. Frustrating, right? Take a breath, listen carefully, and really be open. If you shift it and really try to listen underneath just the words, but really try to get a gauge on what the teacher's really needing support with, then you can start to move forward. But it is frustrating to feel like you have repeated and repeated yourself, and yet here you are again. But that is for you to process. Let the teacher feel like you listened and that you heard them, and that you will do your best to offer the support. This opens a door for you to become a team and to help bridge that gap. And also, this teacher will then be able to speak up, because my hunch is that other teachers are probably feeling the same way. So don't take it personal. Really hear that teacher. And I would also suggest making sure that when you leave, you have left something for them to use as a resource, even if you've already given them that tip. Or make sure that you set up a follow-up communication, whether it's email or a phone call, or set up quarterly meetings, whatever you need to do to make the teacher feel that they're supported, and to make sure that you also feel like you're advocating for your child. The third tip is, do not take it personally. This is a tough one. I have been sitting across from educators who really appear not to care. That's tough. I have dealt with it. I mean, literally, they look like they don't care. They're not listening. So now what? So this is someone that you don't want in your wolf pack. And you need to make sure that you've done your part to give them every possible opportunity to step up and do their part and document it. I mean, I've had this many meetings, I've offered these many resources, and they're still not on board. That's when you have really done a good job of trying so many different ways to communicate with this teacher. You have the resources that you've offered, and this has happened to me in the past, and it's unusual. I would say 98% of the time teachers they're craving for your support. They're craving for the resources that you have, but you're going to run across this, and that's okay. Don't take it personally. That's when you go to their supervisor or their principal, and you don't bash the teacher. You simply say, I don't believe this is someone who understands autism and what my child needs. They have tried. You're not going to bash, you're going to stay positive. Remember that energy that we talked about in step 1, and to advocate with kindness. Tip 4, no matter what the outcome, do something kind for yourself. Remember, you are a superhero, and superheroes need to be refueled. This is very important because on your educational journey, part of your autism journey, it's going to require a lot of energy because you are going to be repeating yourself. You are going to be teaching the same topic over and over and over again to different educators, some who will jump on board and will be part of the wolf pack, and some who will not. And that's okay. So refuel, refuel, refuel. Without refueling, you will not have the energy to be the advocate, and especially to advocate with kindness. And after all, this is what we're doing. It's win-win. It not only helps your child, but you're also helping other children along the way because you're teaching teachers. That's what you're doing. And not only that, but we're bridging a gap, a huge gap between what our kids need from the professionals and from us. So refuel. I hope that this was really helpful. And I can tell you my experience has been exhausting. I share that. You all have heard me say that over and over and over again. And that is the reason that there are certain chapters in A Mother's Guide Through Autism to help you, to help guide you, to help navigate these times on your journey. I'm going to reference chapter 9 in particular in A Mother's Guide Through Autism, Rocking Advocacy with Kindness. It's an important chapter. There's some great tools and tips in there. And remember that you can go back to that chapter anytime you're struggling. And you will have different struggles along your journey, and that's all right. That's why it's a journey, because once a mother guide, always a mother guide. And all these tips and strategies are important for you to feel joy along this journey. If you're interested in hosting a book signing, or you would like for Joseph and I to come talk or speak in your area or even at your school, we're beginning to start mapping out 2023. And just let us know. If you haven't joined our email list, go to our website, amothersguidethroughautism.com, join our email list and send us an email. Even if you have any questions after these podcasts, reach out to us. I check email all the time. We will get back to you. And that is something that we're doing to help bridge this gap and to help you navigate your autism journey. I would also like to mention that if you enjoyed this episode, please like it and subscribe to A Mother's Guide Through Autism YouTube channel, and help Joseph and I spread knowledge, hope, and inspiration. And let's help each other. Let's support each other on our autism journey. I will see you in the next episode. Stay well and stay safe.